4-0. Thank you.
Is this enough people for this meeting?
Okay. So we have a quorum. Next, we'll consider approval of the Parks and Recreation Board minutes from May 29th, the regular meeting minutes. I did suggest one change. I thought the motion was to delay naming the Dacey building, but the way it's written up, it was to not name it after Adele Hurst.
So that wasn't an option to delay
Of the
it.
three options.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just one of those three options, and so
Okay.
y'all made a motion to just
And I think council
to not
has
recommend it.
Reconsidered. The mayor wanted to name it Dalehurst Activity Center, but so they're going to see. I don't know what they'll decide.
Right,
But
and
they're
that's
gonna
on a different
back up in there.
meeting, but in the last meeting, it was just one of those three options was to, and y'all recommended to not approve
Okay.
that.
Well, my people are angry about the way the minutes are reflected, but it's all right.
Okay.
They're angry about a lot of things.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second? Did somebody second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Hi.
Nay. Citizen comment period with Parks and Rec?
Oh, sorry. Ellen,
did you vote nay? What's that?
Did you vote nay?
I did vote nay. Uh-huh. Parks and Recreation Board welcomes comments from citizens early in the agenda of Parks and Recreation Board meetings. Those wishing to speak are encouraged to sign in before the meeting begins. Speakers may be provided with an opportunity to speak during this time on any agenda item or any matter concerning city business, and they must observe the 3-minute time limit.
May I ask a question in the citizen comments? Do we have additional board members that we're expecting to be approved by council anytime soon? I know someone who has applied, and I'm just wondering what the timeline is for adding additional people to the board.
Yeah, we are actually in the middle of scheduling the panel meeting. We're actually in the middle of scheduling the panel meeting, which I need to get with you, Ellen, afterwards to pick a date on the poll doodle. So, but yes, we're in the middle of doing that meeting to do to go through the applicants. Poll doodle poll. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
And in our recent email, there was a list of dates to see if we're available to review, right? All right. If there are no other citizen comments, we'll move on to staff reports and presentations. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding park hours of operation. David Lopez.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair and Park and Recreation Board members. A little background on the park hours discussion. The Code of Ordinances 2681 outlines park hours rules. Currently, the hours for operation for all parks, including the Krug building, are Sunday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. Currently, exceptions may be considered by the city manager upon recommendation by the Parks and Recreation Director, and this would be on a case-by-case basis. In looking at opportunities for improvement, this was something when I had first joined Team Kyle that it was very odd to me to have two different time frames for park hours. It seemed really confusing for park patrons, and then also the start time for the park hours. It seemed rather late. This was brought to our attention again amongst all the competing needs that we have in the park and recreation system after council requested automated locks for park restrooms, and that these automated locks would coincide with park hours, which albeit we do see a lot of residents using parks earlier than 8:30 a.m. It was a concern of ours that they wouldn't have access to restrooms if it did coincide with park hours. And so we wanted to revisit this again. And also, we think it makes sense for these things to be consistent also for police sake and for managing programs throughout the system. So we looked at some benchmarks for other cities. We didn't look at our typical 10 benchmarks. We wanted to look at park and recreation systems that were tried and true and had a lot of experience and successes. So we looked at, for the Central Texas region, all agencies that were CAPRA accredited. CAPRA is the Commission for Accreditation for Park and Recreation Agencies. This accounts for about 2% of park and recreation agencies in the nation. So Round Rock, New Braunfels, and Austin are all CAPRA accredited agencies. Round Rock park hours are from 6 a.m. to midnight daily, so 18 hours. New Braunfels, 6 a.m. to midnight daily as well. And then Austin from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, all consistent hours, Monday through Sunday through Saturday. And then we looked at the top 3 park agencies that ranked the highest of all major cities in the Trust for Public Land Park score. So first being City of Plano, from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily, so also 18 hours. City of Dallas, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. And Frisco was the outlier with very interesting park hours that start 30 minutes before and after sunset. This seems really difficult to monitor, and the goal line is always shifting on that, which might cause some confusion and wouldn't solve our concern. But athletic complexes are the exception to that rule. They reflect the reservation hours in Frisco. So we assessed these benchmarks, and the average hours of operation were 17.8, roughly 18 hours, if you didn't include Frisco. But all parks had consistent hours and daily usage that we were targeting, of course, Frisco being the exception. We also talked to KPD about park hours to get their opinion, and they thought it would be very useful and beneficial for park hours to be consistent. Also, that there would be security lighting employed in parks that was dark skies compliant, if possible, and funded. Also, they agreed with having timers on restrooms that coincide with park hours, as council had recommended. And then KPD would like to be notified as protocol anytime there's any exception. I mentioned earlier, like the exception in the current ordinance for any special activity would be the Parks Director would recommend to the city manager on a case-by-case basis. They just ask that they be alerted in that process if we were to keep that. So some possible revisions after we analyze all of these factors, and Kyle Parks and Recreation recommends an 18-hour park operations. Recommendation 1 being from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Recommendation 2 being from 6 a.m. to midnight. General park restrooms would continue to coincide with park hours, and then we would be willing to consider any additional hours that would coincide with reservations. Although some systems might say if your curfew begins at 11 p.m., then your last reservation should be at 10 p.m. so it minimizes impact. Or if you go to midnight, your last would be an hour prior. So there's consistency in the reservations to make it easy for patrons and public safety. So next steps, we'd like to take some feedback from you all and present that feedback along with our findings and recommendations to the City Council. If Council supported an ordinance change, then we would bring that ordinance change back to Council for consideration. And at this time, I'll take any questions or feedback.
The hours do not necessarily mean that someone has to be on staff at that hour. So if we say we want it to open at 6 a.m., that doesn't mean one of y'all has to come to work at 6 a.m., right?
Correct. Although, yeah, we do have some staff that report earlier, but yeah, that would be, so when, park hours typically end at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., at least operationally speaking. And so we do have on-call staff at all times. So if something were to transpire, after operational hours, we would have the means to cover those things.
I'm glad to see the hours increasing. I hope it will support the new budget requests and more funding, down the line. So a significant increase in hours.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. We don't see an impact to budget if we were to extend park hours. We know that patrons are out using parks earlier than 8:30 a.m., and we know that's important, especially with the senior population. We're in Central Texas. It gets hot. People want to beat the heat. They also want to get their exercise in before the workday. And so we want to allow them that opportunity and have access to restrooms that are operational.
And before work.
Before work, for sure. Those are very popular park hours that And if we're encouraging health and wellness in our system and for our patrons, then we think this should be a priority.
You would have lighting in the morning, right, when it starts?
Yes, sir. So some systems have lighting that runs throughout the entire night. And so you have two mechanisms in place. One is the photo cell, which is going to gauge whether it's dark or light out. The other being the timer. And so if you want to start earlier, before the photo cell, you can set the timer earlier, and then sometimes photo cell would override. But they're just protection measures. But it's really easy to monitor and track. With athletic fields, some of our lights are on Musco system, which means the reservation system talks to it, and we can program them automatically based on when people are using the fields.
So you guys have two recommendations up here. Is there one that you prefer as a department?
I think we're, for the most part, indifferent. I kind of like the 5 a.m. because I do see people out that early, and beyond 11, it's not typical that people are in parks. People
I
who
take my kids for midnight parks.
midnight parks.
It's like a fun thing that we
Okay.
do whenever it's summertime.
That's cool. According to
I'm
this,
also not a
though,
morning person, so.
Yeah, I think the 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. is right around it.
That's my preference too. Just the midnight hour, they say nothing good happens after midnight. And if you're getting kicked out of the park at midnight, then where are you going?
any additional feedback?
No, I prefer the 5 a.m. I know it gets hot really early, and I would just hate for anybody just to be out there in the heat longer than when they can start.
So I'm hearing feedback from Parks Board. Parks Board, it sounds like as a consensus, supports the 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, also, it can be a haven for drugs, and the later you push it, the, harder it seems to be.
And at least if KPD, although they're short-staffed, if they do happen to be passing a park and there's minimal security lighting in key areas, it's easy for them to see, like, hey, we know hours are consistent, they never change, and they might be en route to, or to something or coming from, but something for them to see and maybe report back to us, and we can partner with them if there's an issue, or neighbors can see that, hey, there's consistently activity that's transpiring after this time or during park curfew. Maybe something we should look into. Makes it really easy.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a big deal if we did change hours, since we currently have it on our rule signage. There are overlays that we can adapt to our existing signage.
Should we ready for the next item? Okay.
Thank you all.
Number 3, receive
We
a
need
report,
to
hold a
make a
discussion, and
motion
provide
on the
staff feedback regarding the Parks and Recreation proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26 and the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Thank you. And I apologize in advance if I breeze through these. There's a lot of information to cover. So I'll try to be timely, and then I'll give opportunity at the end of the presentation for any questions. If there's something that you feel like I probably need to ask right now, the iron's hot, feel free to do so as well. So a quick overview. We're going to go over our mission and vision, which were adopted in the Parks Master Plan. We'll also talk about Council's recent vision, and you'll understand why once we read it. We're going to go through the current org chart, and then we're going to talk about some performance measures for Park and Recreation. This isn't a comprehensive listing of performance measures, but just some highlights of things. And then we'll talk about some major accomplishments as well as the goals for the incoming fiscal year. We'll do a supplemental overview. So supplemental means the funding that we're asking for in addition to our current budget for next fiscal year, and there'll be descriptions of those particular things, and they'll also be ranked. Then we'll do an overview of the full-time equivalencies that come out of this request. Not everything that we're asking for is a position, but when we do ask for a position, we'll make sure to re-summarize that at the end of the supplementals. And then we'll talk about we'll just highlight how the org chart would change. And then we're also going to go through some fees and revenues, mostly those that have been added or changed, whether it's increase or decrease, and then do a comprehensive budget overview. And then we'll talk about the capital improvement program. And that should be a fun conversation. For mission and vision, our new mission and vision, as adopted by the PROS Master Plan, is the mission is to be a premier and sustainable parks and recreation system that builds community and promotes health, conservation, and inclusivity for all. Our vision is we envision a thriving, inclusive network of parks and recreation where nature and community come together to enhance quality of life and establish Kyle as the premier regional standard. Council's vision has come out of their council workshop was Kyle is the undisputed regional leader in vehicular and pedestrian mobility, and we embolden that because we feel like our trail system is an answer and solution to that. State-of-the-art parks and sports infrastructure and quality of life retail which augment a diverse, vibrant, equitable, thriving community that families, neighbors, and businesses are proud to call home. We embolden those things that were park-centric, and you can see there are three major items in their vision that were central to Parks and Recreation, and we were proud of that. Okay, so this is the current org chart. We are comprised of three divisions, one being the administrative division, and so this team here is primarily on the administrative division. And then we have our community, aquatics, recreation, events, and senior services division that we call CARES, or the recreation division, that's led by Assistant Director Amy Garcia on the right. There are two division managers that report to Ms. Garcia. And then we have the largest side of the house, which is what we call our Parks Tech division, parks, trails, environmental conservation. It's our beautification division, our park planning, and that's led by Deputy Director of Parks, Chris Escoto. There are 4 division managers that report to Mr. Escoto, including our beautification manager, our parks maintenance manager, our conservation manager, and our parks planning manager, who's actually with us tonight, Mr. Will Atkinson. So there's a total of 62 full-time employees. This doesn't include our part-time employees that especially ramp up during the summer months with camp and the aquatic season, which in total would be over 100 employees. Just quick highlights of performance measures. Estimated recreation program participation is over 5,000. The total parkland acres that we've added within this fiscal year to our inventory is 114, which is quite impressive. Considering we didn't get a substantial budget increase, we found a lot of efficiencies that we'll talk about later, but we try to minimize the cost of maintaining our system, and we want to be a sustainable system, and it's not feasible that our budgets grow at the rate that our park system does, and so we rely heavily on efficiencies, the right equipment, and even volunteers to minimize the impact of personnel costs. So total estimated restroom cleanings, this is by the individual stall. It seems really high, but 9,000. We clean every restroom 7 days a week, which is really impressive. Most systems can't afford to do that. We're very fortunate in Kyle that we can. And so total special events, so far 35, and we've served almost 25,000 today. That number is probably beyond that since we've had some additional special events since this budget update was presented to council in early June. Total estimated playground inspections per year is 441. Every playground in the city of Cal is inspected by a certified playground safety inspector weekly, which is also a very impressive metric. Most systems are fortunate to get biweekly inspections by someone like that. To even have a position like that on their staff is a privilege. And then another highlight from this that I'll point out are the number of park partnerships. With the park partnerships agreement that we have that was authorized by council, they amount to low-risk agreements, and they can be executed by the Director of Parks and Recreation. Really helps us offset some of our costs, and we've got to date 13 total park partnerships, which amount to nearly $12,000 in sweat equity or like-kind labor. I think the going market rate for a volunteer hour is roughly $30 per hour, and so we quantify that data, and we're constantly measuring things that we're out. So this is like additional services that we're getting in our park system thanks to our wonderful volunteers. And then the thousands of acres that we mow on our right-of-ways, and we don't have the metric on parks, but that's over 10,000 acres per year that we mow in the park system. Quite impressive feats by our Parks and Recreation team. Some major accomplishments that we're proud of for this fiscal year. We received the TRAPS Lone Star Legacy Award for Mary Kyle Hartson Park, which means that's a designation in perpetuity. to be one of the Lone Star Legacy Parks for class of 2025 that met a strict list of criteria statewide was something that we're very proud of. We were also featured in NRPA Magazine, January 2025 edition, for all of the progress that we made in our park system and trying to service our rapidly growing population. By the end of this fiscal year, we will have completed 4 ribbon cuttings, 1 groundbreaking and 1 unveiling. We also acquired the Republic Drive building that we're going to cut ribbon on next week. You all have been, or this week, you all have been invited to that. We've got standard operating procedures now for every division within Park and Recreation. We were able to extend our pool hours within existing budget with minimal savings and finding efficiencies. And also, we did a major reorg in Parks and Recreation. And one thing that one major feat that was quite a lift was getting the Parks and Recreation master plan adopted. Some cost containment strategies that we've implemented this year. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, nearly $12,000 from the in-kind volunteer hours. We had a cost avoidance of nearly $800,000 by our 2 electricians. That was something that we felt was really impressive. On the Republic Drive building alone, they saved us nearly $400,000. That was what the job order contractor was going to charge, and we were able to value engineer that. They did it in-house and did a phenomenal job. We're very proud of what they're doing. And so, I mean, we're on track probably to get $1 million in savings a year from 2 electricians. So that's probably one of the biggest returns on our investment with those 2 very talented staff members. We've also expanded our grow zones, as I mentioned. So there's some acres within the park system that have lower programming that have allowed us to offset some of the mowing costs. That's still a work in progress. I think the community sometimes struggles with seeing some of these grow zones because it's something new, and we do have signage out there to try to inform, and we have conservation materials that our conservation manager and urban biologist John Davis has helped us circulate, but it is a learning curve, and that goes for Park and Recreation too. Sometimes we allow the areas to grow up just to see what seed bank that they'll yield, what types of plants will come up, if there's some of the native plants that we can restore, but there's this growing process. Not all of these areas that are currently grow zones will remain grow zones. Some, if they don't yield the proper seed bank, some areas will be strategically cut back, but there are growing pains, and we've got to give and take along, just as we ask the community to. So we work together and try to find something that's a win for everybody. Okay, we've also had several process improvements within the system. So we conducted a SWOT analysis on our programming to see which ones are highly popular and have the most attendance. And then we look at those that might be struggling, and we look to possibly reallocate those, maybe to some new programs like the Heroes programming, which has been wildly successful at Heroes Memorial Park, where we've got like a 9/11 event planned. We had a flag retirement ceremony. We had a Memorial Day celebration. Those are all new programs that we provided within existing budget and with the help of partners. And so with helping to continue to evaluate those programs that might not be as popular or as relevant in Kyle, we might be able to reallocate funding to those to grow them or add more, and without putting a larger burden on our budget. We've also, in our reorg, we looked at making efficient maintenance schedules. We now have service level agreements for all of our core functions. So, for instance, graffiti abatement within 24 hours is our target for 311s. The moment it's reported, you have 1 business day to abate, and we measure our performance. And I think we're in the 90 percentile for those. We also implemented a feral hog strategy. It wasn't something that I think we anticipated in bringing on our urban biologist and conservation manager, John Davis, but again, pardon the pun, but it was a wildly successful program. And we've abated all hogs that have caused damages on our parks. And we continue to monitor those because that's going to be an ongoing process for us as feral hogs move through the water corridors, which are in floodplains, which comprise a percentage of our park system. So some fiscal year 2025 goals. I'm going to be really brief on this slide because we're going to cover these in the supplementals, and so a couple that aren't highlighted in supplementals is what I'll focus on. Beginning with the first bullet, we're going to begin construction on several parks in 2025, including the 1500 Daisy facility, which we're currently calling the Kyle Community Center. which will primarily serve our seniors, as well as the skate park or the All Wheels Park, which you guys will hear about later tonight, as well as parking lot projects for Steeplechase and Waterleaf, and several Vibe Trail projects. The other thing that we're working on that you won't see in the supplementals is to pursue landscape certifications, and also ensure that we have Cartograph implemented for all of our operational functions. That's our work order system. So we're able to schedule our work in Cartograph, capture all the work, all the hours, and all the costs, and so we can make good business decisions moving forward. Now the supplementals. So these are, as I mentioned earlier, supplementals are the new things that we're asking for, essentially the budget increases for park and recreation. There's some operational expenses where like the cost of business is rising. If the cost of printing materials or of landscape materials is going up, then we would ask for just a budget increase. But these are supplementals are specifically new programs or services that we are proposing, or in some cases they're they might be even council-directed items. So these are all ranked. We have 27 in total. And the first one, these I will read through because I think they're important. So you have the check marks mean that they help us accomplish goals of our PROS master plan. We could talk about the description, what will happen if they're not funded, and then differentiating between what's a recurring expense, this is going to be an ongoing expense every fiscal year here on out, or if it's a one-time expense. For instance, if it's a piece of equipment, that's probably going to qualify as a one-time expense. We're not proposing to buy a new tractor every year. And then we're going to talk about potential offsets in revenue that could be realized by accepting this supplemental. And then what you see on the far right is the net gain or the loss. So starting with Daisy Lane facility operations, this would be that senior building. We're asking for staff to help manage and coordinate for that building. And so that's a loss, but it's $232,000 for ongoing expenses. There might be some revenue offsets, which we'll talk about later in the fee schedule for people who are reserving rooms in that facility. It is our highest ranking priority because that building is nearing completion, and we need to have a feasible path forward. And then our second highest priority was a special events coordinator. As I mentioned earlier, we're increasing in a lot of our special events, and there's demand for even more. And right now we have a team of 3, you might say, 2.5, because you've got Claudia, who's our special events manager, and even though she's a manager, she does a lot of the groundwork in preparation for things, even like Kyle Fair. And then with Sheba, who's not only helps with Kyle Fair like the rest of the Parks and Recreation team, but has several ongoing programs. And sometimes Darcy will assist with some of those programs. And so we're shorthanded here, and we want to right-size that. So that's our second priority. And then bucket truck replacement. As lighting standards change, these standards are getting taller. Our current bucket truck doesn't safely access. It doesn't have the height needed to service some of these new fixtures. And so we used to have the old standards. So we don't want to get rid of our existing, because then we can sort of multiply our efforts. And sometimes Public Works uses the bucket truck, but we really need that larger truck to service the new fixtures as we grow that lighting inventory out. And then we have a Parks Landscape Technician. As I mentioned earlier, we've grown in over 100 acres of parkland, and our standards have increased for how we maintain our beds, and a lot of the native landscaping programs that we have in place now. And then we're going to add additional park inventory in this coming fiscal year, and so that warrants another 2,080 hours for a landscape technician. And then guest services coordinator. This is a multifaceted position that would service all of the reservations that we manage in Park and Recreation, would also help with some of our promotional and marketing. If you guys have followed us on social media, we don't have a strong presence there. We don't do a ton of interaction or responding, and we know we're weak there. And so that's another hat that this individual would wear, as well as being opposite at Daisy, so that while they're doing these things from their desk, they can also help with the check-in of guests and management. So it's a utility infielder for us and very high priority. And then Kyle Fair enhancement, we've had a lot of feedback that we would like for better quality performers for Kyle Fair. There's a lot of opportunities for improvement. And so we're trying to right size the budget for making the event what we think it could and should be based on the feedback we've received. If we don't get the funding, of course, then we kind of maintain status quo and find efficiencies where we can. Specialized conservation equipment. I talked about the cost avoidance we received and some of our grow zones and establishing new wildflower areas or restoring prairie areas, but we need special equipment to do that. So these would be the implements like seed drills that we would need to make that happen. Although there's a minimal cost impact for this type of equipment, there's a huge return on our investment by funding that, as well as contributing back to a healthy ecosystem for the city of Kyle. Commercial tree maintenance contract would be to allow us to provide the proper maintenance to trees within our system. We're not a heavily forested park system, but we have a lot of riparian forest areas around our waterways, and some of these areas they haven't received proper tree maintenance in who knows how long because the funding's not there. This takes specialized equipment to get really high up on lifts, and you might need tree climbers, people who are skilled. This would also allow us to provide tree care to certain trees, especially like Mary Kyle Hartson Park, where you have these precious oak trees that have taken a lot of stress over the years and have compacted soils, and so that might allow us to air spade the root zone and maybe to have deep root fertilizations for some of these. So that would be $51,000 for this program. And most of these services are performed by certified arborist companies who are specialized and they have the right equipment. Then specialized mowing equipment. This would be for to help us with our high impact turf areas. Think about La Verde, think about Mary Kyle Hartson Park, where they're hard to reach places, but you might need like a real mower that's able to get in, not only get in the area, but maintain at the proper height. There's a lot that goes into a healthy turf program, especially on the high traffic lawns. We'll talk about some more of that equipment later. Kyle Camp's right sizing. So with the increasing cost of business, we wanted to increase the budget. This is a heavily subsidized program, and so although there is a cost associated with camps, it's not full cost recovery. But to get this right, we need another $174,000. There's a lot of costs increasing with facilities that we're renting out, like the schools. And so if their costs go up for us to reserve, then that's a huge impact on our budget, and we're trying to minimize how that impacts our campers. And then the CPR Junior Lifeguard Training Program, and so this would be, although there's a loss associated with it, this would allow us to provide CPR training not only to our lifeguard staff but also to city employees. We believe that all City of Kyle staff should be CPR certified, and it would be much more expensive to do that if we hired a private service to do it. So there could be some cost avoidance that's understated here if we were to take that. The seasonal camp expansions, currently we offer summer and spring camps, but this would allow us to add a fall and winter camp when students are on break and give some reprieve to parents who might struggle finding childcare during those times. And then we also ask for a turf aerator. So as I mentioned earlier, that the high traffic lawn care, if you're going to maintain your turf areas correctly, you need to have specialized equipment. It may be surprising to you all that we don't have a piece of equipment like a turf aerator, which decompacts the soils, helps reintroduce oxygen. Compaction is not good for the lawn. It's gonna choke out your root zone for your turf, and this is really important for your athletic fields as well as lawns like La Verde that really take a lot of wear and tear. And then the I-35 supplemental mowing contract would be to add some additional mowing services to I-35. Some of you may not be aware that TxDOT has scaled back their mowing for the I-35 corridor. They do a good seeding program. It actually has a good yield, and it looks really nice during the season, but the mowing is minimal. In some areas, it creates serious visibility issues as well as some challenges to the aesthetics for the area. What we're primarily concerned about is, although we really care about the aesthetics and making Kyle look good, is those visibility triangles. And so we've been supplementing the mowing. Right now, TxDOT's on average doing 2 mowings per year. And so we're proposing to enhance safety and increase the amount of supplemental mowings that we do via contractor. And so that would require an additional $23,000 to realize that. And then for specialized trail equipment, we in addition to growing our parks inventory and acreage, we're also expanding our trail network, including our soft surface trail. This equipment is specific to our soft surface single track trails, and this would allow the proper maintenance for those areas. The event equipment trailer, although it's not ranked as high, we think it's really important. We just have a lot of competing needs, but this would be a special event trailer for the recreation services, community services team that would go out to every one of our events or programs, and we have a full inventory of chairs and tables, as well as cell banners. It would house our speakers, a sound system, as well as a podium. This would be all branded, and it would also be wrapped to know that City of Kyle's here, and we're going to have a good time, but we've got all the equipment we need. It would also allow for more efficiency, which would turn into a higher quality program or event. The seasonal part-time aquatic tech position, right now we have one full-time aquatic tech, and then we have our aquatics coordinator who helps supplement that. And so we really need to at least have a part-time aquatic tech on hand to help us maintain our splash pads, our pool, as well as our ornamental fountains throughout the system. Can you imagine one full-time employee devoted to what's a 7-day-a-week operation during the summer months? And so being at part-time, we wouldn't need this position year-round. We could have them on hand when we need them during the summer months and wouldn't put a big strain on the budget. And this is really important for safety compliance as well, as you all understand. And then the James Atkin furniture replacement package, right? Pool furnishings, they're not cheap, and without this, we have no replacement schedule. $10,000 wouldn't replace all equipment; it would replace about a third. But this would be an ongoing program, which would allow us to fully replace our furnishings for the swimming pool every third year.
I like that. He was a nice guy.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I met him.
Our parks, we're also asking for a trails technician for that increased mileage that we're going to be acquiring. And then Place Area I is crowdsourcing technology, so it's neat. It allows you to know when people, for instance, for events, where people are coming from to attend the events, how long they stay. It might show you what hotels they stay at, where they're eating at or shopping at while they're here. These are important metrics, not only for Park and Recreation to know the success or failure of our programs or opportunities for improvement, but it's also would be very beneficial for economic development and trying to attract new businesses to Kyle and to show potential incentives and opportunities that are centered around some of the programs and services and facilities that we offer, as well as for the planning division. So although multiple departments would represent this, this would be probably of greatest impact to Park and Recreation. So we're trying to champion this on behalf of the city. Mower replacement, in evaluating our system and inventory, we found that we had some excess mowers, but they're not in the best shape. And so we're proposing to take one. There's 5 mowers that we're in excess of in the, I can't remember if it's the Parks Beautification Division, but we've reallocated one of those to the Trails Division, the best of those 5. And then the remaining 4 that are not in such great shape, we're proposing to do a trade-in, which would help, get some funding back, and then take that money and put it towards a new mower that's right size for our operations. In-house swim lessons would be actually a revenue opportunity for us. Currently, we outsource our swim lessons. This would allow us to bring those in-house, and then we would fully capture those revenues associated. And so we're looking at a $4,000 net gain by doing that. So it seems like a no-brainer. Competitive swim team, right now we have the sort of entry-level recreational swim. With the competitive swim group, we're trying to expand that services to more feeder programs at the competitive level. And then volunteer engagement program, this would be, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a great return on investments by focusing on our volunteers, but in that effort, we know that we need to recruit them, be attracted to volunteers, and also retain them. And so what's important for that endeavor is to recognize volunteers, give them awards, give them recognition, provide more means for marketing to them. And so for $9,000, just this year alone without that, we've already realized to date nearly $12,000 in in-kind services. So we hope that will help us to expand that recruitment, and it'll probably end up tripling what we're asking for. The IPM vehicle replacement program. This is taking what's currently a city-owned vehicle and doing a lease program for a new truck. The program that our integrated pest management technician uses now is in disrepair. It's rough. It needs to be replaced. We want to get him the right equipment for the job. We're also asking for some trailers, one for the IPM technician so he can trailer his spray rigs or his motorized hopper systems, which would make the service optimal, as well as for our landscape team when they haul the plant material, when they're hauling the specialized equipment, they have the right trailer for the job. And then we're asking for a City Fest expansion. So last October we had City Fest. As you recall, the mayor's State of the City address used to be at a ticketed event, I believe, with the chamber. And so the mayor moved that to a City Fest, which would allow all in the city of Cal to attend for free. And the city manager also added a program where all the departments for the city would come out to meet the community and highlight what they do for the city and get a chance to interact, pass out materials. There was a lot of community engagement. It was a very successful program last year, and so there's some desire to grow that. And so Parks and Recreation, being the lead department in that endeavor, is asking for a right sizing of that budget to do that. If we didn't get it, then we would use the existing budget. And so that, as you can see, that brings the total for recurring expenses at 1.5 and the one-time expenses to $441,000, with some revenue offsets of $66,000, which we'll go into more momentarily. Here's, as promised, the FTE overview. So out of all of those 27 supplementals, we've asked for 5 positions. Here's a recap of it. And those total out to nearly $600,000. Again, here's the current org chart that I showed you earlier with 62 FTEs. Here's the proposed org chart if we were to get all 5 positions. And so the boxes in red are where the new positions would land. So you see they're evenly spread across the system. The highest position that we would be adding are the coordinator level positions. All right, so everybody still with me? We're going to go over fees proposed now. This is specifically new fees. We haven't had these before, and so I'll read through these briefly. The multi-purpose room rate, we know that we've got Republic Drive building that we're about to cut ribbon on this week that's going to have multi-purpose rooms, and we need a rate to go with that. And then when the Daisy Lane building is finished in this coming fiscal year, we're going to need a rate for those multi-purpose rooms. Then we want to have a discounted rate for our park partners for one. I talked about the park partnership agreement earlier. So if they're meeting to discuss business related to their partnership agreement, which goes back to Park and Recreation, we thought we'd like to offer them a discount on a room rental, especially if the service is going back to the city. We also wanted to look at a discount for the civic groups, the 501c3 groups that service the city of Kyle, that are rooted in Kyle. And so we would say, if you're a resident who's representing one of these groups in Kyle, that it would be $10. Sometimes we have other groups outside of Kyle, within Hays County, for instance, that like the Hays County Master Naturalists, where even though we do have residents in Kyle who are Hays County Naturalists, if that changed, that would still allow them to help us with our system and give them a discounted room rate if they are putting that service back into parks or anywhere else in the city. And then Daisy facility rental. So this would be for the full facility. If we did we said, hey, if we do the open ballroom concept, now that it's been approved for those 6 rooms, for the full grand ballroom, if we opened up all 6, we said it doesn't make sense to not give them the lobby area and full access to the restrooms for their event. So we see this as a venue reservation. And so we wanted to have a slightly discounted rate for that. So there's some incentive for the entire building being reserved. And then we needed a kitchen rate because that building will have a kitchen as well as the Krug. Even though we're not sure, how we'll end up using the Krug, we're going to have a feasibility study that will determine the best use for that building. It does have a kitchen, so we needed a rate for that. Community garden plot fees, these were recommended by the Community Garden Committee last year, but it was not recommended in time for the fee schedule and the budget process. And so these are the rates that they recommended. So it's $45 for 4x8, $30 for ADA, $75 for an 8x12, and then $0 for garden partners. So what that means is if somebody is partnering with us to help maintain the garden, because it is a community garden, and ideally you don't want the Parks Department maintaining a garden that the community is supposed to be managing, we need to incentivize people to help with that. So this might be a common area, helping to turn over some of the aggregates in the area, or helping with new member orientation. We would incentivize them by, if they have that partnership agreement, with a no fee on their garden plot. The practice field rate is also something new. We've identified areas within our system that aren't irrigated, that aren't as highly maintained as, say, a Greg Clark Park field, but somebody might still want to reserve it for maybe a football practice. And so it's not where they play games. They just need some kind of lot that is relatively flat and not used for anything else and just mowed down to do practice. And so we wanted to give them the opportunity to reserve at a discounted rate. And so we're proposing $15 for residents and $30 for non-residents. And then field add-ons. So if somebody is running a tournament or a complement of games, we wanted to have these a la carte options for them. Like, hey, if in between games you want us to chalk it or do any other special services, there's a fee associated with it that they would, help us as a pass-through. And then we don't have a sport court rate. Right now, we're primarily thinking of the sand volleyball court at La Verde Park. We've asked if we have people come and desire to reserve that, and we don't have a fee for it, so we couldn't do that. And so now we're like, okay, it's probably be lucrative for us to offer that. So this is what we're proposing. This could also, as we expand our park system and our assets, this could also be used for other types of courts in the future. La Verde Park Amphitheater is, believe it or not, a new rate, and so we're proposing a resident, non-resident for that. And then special event application, as well as a deposit associated with it. So now, this is existing fees that we're proposing an increase on. So the banner ads hasn't been adjusted in a while, so, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have 4 questions from
Okay.
just this slide. Can I do those
Okay.
before we move?
Yes.
Okay. Kitchen rental. If we're renting a kitchen, does that mean anything about the health department? Like if we're renting it out and people are using it to like make food for sale, does that mean we're saying the health department needs to come? Are we opening ourselves up to
so
that?
part of that, yeah, we would be very careful on a reservation that's going to use it as for profit. We're thinking for kitchen that you're going to use it as a part of your
Event.
your event.
Okay.
And so this would be
not
like, hey,
for
if
commercial rental.
yeah,
like,
not for commercial
I
and for
go make cookies
sales.
and then
Yeah,
I
this
sell
would be.
them.
But yeah,
Okay.
there will be a criteria in those contracts that they have to adhere to.
So not a ghost kitchen? There had been some talk about a ghost kitchen.
Did you guys have something to add?
So if a vendor or someone came out and they wanted to do it that way, they would still need to follow the Hayes County. So no matter what, even if they're selling any type of food or giving any food, they still have to get permitting to give food in any capacity.
But that's not like an us thing. We don't have to facilitate that
No.
or do any of that legwork. That's
No.
all on the person who's.
We just make sure they
Yes,
comply
that's
by
correct.
contract.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the same with our food vendors as well. It's
Okay.
all on them. It's them that have to get the permitting through Hayes County.
The next one was
I
on
would
the.
add just
Yeah.
one minor thing to that we will need to make sure that from a health permit standpoint, that our kitchen will be meeting those minimum requirements. So there will be something that the city will be doing, but that's
Right.
just like the ice machine as an example, that we're following health code for that.
No slime.
all
Right.
that. Yeah, okay, got it. The garden partners, the plot size, do they get either size if they choose? If they volunteer a certain number of hours, they get a big one, and a certain other number, they get a small one?
Yeah, we haven't. We'll probably focus on the larger plots first, and then just incentivize them even further. And we didn't want to limit it to any size because we wanted to look at what was actually available as well.
Gotcha. Practice field, the rentals of that, does that mean that I can rent a field and I get dibs on it as a resident before Lone Star does? I have a bone to pick with Lone Star. I'm sorry. I despise them, so I'm just asking.
Yeah, right now on practice fields, there's not, we don't have a first right of refusal or a contract for practice fields, so it would be just sort of first come, first serve. Yeah.
Okay. And then the sport court, does that include Ash Pavilion?
That does
Because you only
not include
mentioned
Ash Pavilion.
the
Ash Pavilion has its own.
Yeah, it's
own
yeah.
reservation, it's just not on here? Or
Yeah,
maybe
this
it's
is-
on the next slide?
Think volleyball court for now.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Okay, was that it for that slide? Okay. So these are just fees. I won't read through all of these because you're familiar with the fees, but there's it's time to revisit for increases. So our costs go up. We're proposing changes, and if it hasn't been revisited in a while, we really focused in on those. Okay, and so now we're going to look at recreation revenue projections. And so you'll see on the far right the proposed projection. And so there's focus on the verbiage at the bottom right of the slide. So with all of these, we're looking at a $31,500 increase in projections from this fiscal year to the next. And there'll be summary later. This is specifically for special events now. And so we're looking at a 20,000 increase by all of those changes, whether it be a new one or a change in existing. And then about $4,500 projected for aquatics revenue programs. And so we wanted to do a 3-year outlook of our budget. And so we have grown in our budget quite a bit. So the increase alone from this fiscal year to next, if we got all 27 supplementals, would be a 50% increase. It's likely that we won't get everything that we asked for, but whatever we don't get, that service goes away, as I mentioned earlier. So if we're asking for CPR programming or an increase in camp programming, we'll have to find some way to offset it. Even with our increased parks acreage, if we don't get an FTE that coincides with the increase in what we've been asked to maintain, we'll have to look at trimming out the existing system. And so just as a very simplified example, if we didn't get funding, but our what we're asked to maintain increases, we might look at things like, hey, these parks are mowed every 7 days. Some of these parks may now have to go to biweekly mowings to help offset the cost. So we don't, the money's not there, and so we've got to find some other means. And we'll try to be as efficient with it and strategic as possible. So we'll look at a wide range of areas where we would take that hit, and it might be in multiple functions, but we'll have to find some means to accomplish that. In some cases, we just won't get the service. And so those risks are taken. And now we'll talk about the last item, which is Park CIP. And so this is just our methodology with the team that we have in place. We've got $5 million per year. And instead of looking at it like, hey, we just rotate parks, we had to look at the needs in the park system. Where are we hurting the most? What things are in disrepair and needs of replacements? For example, playgrounds, we've been replacing Steeplechase, outdated playground. There were a lot of safety concerns, as well as Waterley Park. And so with this philosophy, we made that a priority. We said, we're beyond our useful life, has the most risk associated, has the most impact even to some areas of the community where you have a lot of children and a lot of need for these things. And so with this methodology, we were able to make those things a priority. We also look at things in the aggregate. And so rather than this, we saw this $5 million a year as we're going to look at the capacity this year. What's important, and we'll talk about this and just on the next slide actually, but planning. There wasn't a lot of planning involved in the park system in the past. And I mean like starting with feasibility studies and starting with conceptuals and getting community feedback. Sometimes it's been jumped straight into construction on things or and without a plan. And so you see a lot of they seem like isolated projects. Take Greg Clark Park, for example. There might have been a new splash pad, but you didn't think about where it landed and how it affected the rest of the park. And was this the right splash pad? And is all of the mechanisms optimized by construction design? And then how that impacts the parking. And so what we're trying to do is we got to do site master plans and how everything is impacted by it. There's some things that were no-brainers, like parking. You need steeplechase, for instance. It was just dirt. And so you probably gain, just by striping and having paved surfacing, you probably doubled your capacity for parking just by having straight lines. You guys have been to parking lots before, and you're like, my gosh, somebody parks sideways, and then everybody, in line is parking out of sorts, and you're like, we've kind of probably got, for every car that's parked wrong, that's another car that missed opportunity. And so for that, it's like we don't need a master plan to tell us we got to improve this parking situation. And so we started implementing those things right away. But we looked at, with all this design in place right now that we're doing, we're not eating up a lot of construction. And so we said we've got to get these projects shovel ready. We've got to get the design in place. That's what we were spending most of this year doing. Although there are some projects like Republic Drive or the fitness court at Lake Kyle that we're able to just launch and keep moving. And so methodology is to invest towards high-quality, innovative parks that set our city apart and enhance community identity. So I mentioned earlier these planning steps. So we started with feasibility, then we go to the conceptuals, and then we go to the schematics. And so schematics, like, hey, if conceptual was like, hey, what are these front elevations going to look like? What is the general programming of an area? These are sort of due diligence things that you work through this process. Schematic is going to get to the next level of details and might say, hey, maybe there's an entry here and just general, a little more defined layouts. And then you get design development, which is like, how are we going to program this space now and start getting, to how this systematically meshes together. And then your construction documentation phase is like, all right, where does that screw go in the wall? And where do these studs set up? All those construction details and all of the project manuals are in that last phase before you go into construction. Okay, so active projects, we have 28, and Chris and Will Atkinson do a great job juggling 28 projects, and primarily by Will. As one person, that's a lot. It's a big ratio. But right now we've got about $3 million in active projects, and so with those we have the skate park that we'll talk about tonight. The projects in red here are projects that aren't funded by that $25 million over 5 years that I talked about earlier. There's an alternative funding bucket. We'll talk about those later. But here's what we have in park improvements, trail improvements, as well as facilities. And then here's it by fiscal year. And so in the coming fiscal year, we're still be in construction phase for the skate park, although it'll be completed within that fiscal year. Steeplechase parking lot is going to go in construction, as we mentioned earlier. These contracts that are being approved right now, they're still going to be going through their design processes. And so the total funding for this coming fiscal year is north of $5 million. As you can see, it's $7.6 million. But we have a rollover of $2.8 million that we didn't realize in that $3 million. So we're taking all of that remainder and rolling it into the following year to help offset some of that cost. So right now you got your running total that's closer to the $10 million, and this is year 2. And so in the following year, you see $5.6 million in all the projects associated with it. I want to point out in transparency, the splash pads for Steeplechase and Greg Clark Park. Right now, it's no secret, those are a house of cards. We probably could have done better with the design process. We could have had a design process on those, but there are a lot of big risk factors there that we're closely monitoring. If we're able to get another year or 2 out of those, then it's obviously going to be a win for us, and we'll reallocate that funding to something else. But we wanted to show it on the plan somewhere, and also be transparent that there are some concerns with the operations for those 2, and they're not cheap. And so replacing them or getting them right is going to be north of $1 million in estimation for each of those. So if you go through to all the way to FY 28-29, that would end that 5-year program. We're hoping that we'll continue to get $5 million at least every year to continue to expand this year over year, because there's a lot of needs, and you're going to see some of those that fell under the line, so that we're going to be still outstanding on. Some of these, and we see that split into multiple phases, but in the aggregate, you're like, David, that's $27 million, not $25 million in the end. But we know that we have a lot of opportunities for grant funding. For instance, we've got 2 grants in work right now for our capital projects to help offset that and get us closer to $25 million. Okay, so here's that overview again. So everything you see in the yellow was above the line, so to speak, and falls within the $25 million budget. Everything to the right in orange is everything that fell below the line. And so if you see things like, we're going to be planning some things that we don't necessarily have construction funding identified for. So we need to know what the site plans are for instance, Steeplechase Park, but we don't have the money to go into construction. But you got to have design first. If we got another $5 million, that might be Steeplechase one year, just as an example. It could be Waterleaf Park construction, depending on the priority. And then you could see how long it would take to build. If you're, maybe there's only 1 or 2 projects out of these 16. And that would be, if hypothetically speaking, that was a $5 million per each of these 16, it could take you 16 years. But bottom line is $40 million fell below the line. And so if there's opportunities later, it's for additional funding, somehow we kill it on grants, maybe we can shrink that gap a little bit. There might be a decision later by the residents of Kyle that they want these faster, and we'll have to talk about opportunities, maybe in CO bonds, maybe in GEO bonds for the future, but that's going to be dependent upon, what's really important to the residents of Kyle. There's a lot of need and limited funding, but we wanted to show you guys the big picture. And as mentioned earlier, those other funding buckets that aren't part of the $25 million. So things that Parks and Recreation is working on, some downtown revitalization plans, some beautifying with parkways in the downtown area that wouldn't be covered by that. It could be possibly funded by the TERS if it were approved. And then the Greg Clark Park, All-Wheel Skate Park, that's 2020 bond funds that are funding that project. The sports complex, we have funding identified for that. And there's that $14 million at minimum, and then there's some other funding buckets that could help with some of the outdoor improvements for a sports complex, which were identified as needs in the master plan. So that doesn't mean, when I say sports complex, I don't mean like interior, so to speak, or like recreation center right now. I'm talking about the exterior portion of that, which would be right now in preliminary site plans, adding some soccer fields to the system of higher quality, which would help. You saw in the PROS master plan, we had a lot of needs for athletic fields. So we looked at our entire park system and where we could possibly plug in athletic fields, and this would be one opportunity for us to shrink that gap. And then the trail improvements like the Vibe, there's additional funding buckets identified for those things, as well as grants, and then the public arts. So we also identified what funds are helping to provide those projects.
Where's the Spring Branch Vibe Trail?
Spring Branch is in the Silverado neighborhood, and so it would be off of, if you take
Western Cove?
Spring Branch Drive, right? Is that Spring Branch Drive? Yeah, there's a,
Exit Western Cove in Silverado? Yeah?
yeah, there's like it's like an 8-acre triangle in the middle of that area that looks like detention area now, and there's a small sliver of area that's adequate for a 10-foot trail path.
I live on Spring Branch, and I've never seen a trail there.
It's not there.
there
This
yet.
would be, it's under design right now.
They just got the land. Like,
Yeah, we just acquired the land this fiscal year, and
yeah.
but this would be once we go into construction. But right now it's under
Trail
design.
improvements. So
Yeah,
immediately my mind thought it's already there.
yeah, I can see your point there. But yeah, this would be a new trail. So any of these are going to be, even though it's a trail improvement, it's really trail construction for all of these. Sorry about the confusion. Any other questions? Okay, I know that was a lot, but thank you all.
Thank you.
It's okay, we want you to have all the money.
All right,
Yeah.
any questions,
And-
feedback?
Well, let us know if there's anything you said earlier, you've already presented to council, but if there are upcoming dates and budget workshops that you would like for us to give a vote of confidence, let us know.
Thank you
Send
all.
an email or something.
Thank you all.
Or specific talking points you want us to like put out into the world, send us a flyer.
Yeah, if you see
We'll say
certain
the words.
obstacles or something, we could help you overcome.
Yeah, and if you guys get any questions as advocates for park and recreation in the community, you have the presentation available, and I hope that it was a helpful summary of, a very big and complicated process. Thank you all.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 4. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding general departmental updates on new staff, community events, programs, aquatics, staff recognitions, park partnerships, and capital improvement projects. Amy?
All right, Amy Garcia, Assistant Director for the Parks and Recreation Department. I will start off this presentation and then I will hand it off to Chris Escoto, the Deputy Director. All right, so to kick us off, Parks and Rec monthly report. Just a general overview. We'll touch on community events, programs, aquatics, Parks and Rec month, staff training and recognition, park partnerships, and CIP program. All right, to jump off into community events, just a June flashback. We hosted the Kids Fishing Clinic on June 6th in partnership with Texas Park and Wildlife Department. We had 72 attendees and fishers come out, and so you'll see that picture there on the right. Also, we had our Flag Day retirement ceremony. This was a co-sponsorship between City of Kyle, Patrick Henry Chapter, AMVETS Post 115, VFW Post 12058. And then we had over 125 attendees. We did receive a lot of great feedback from this program. So if any of you did come out, thank you for coming out. We will have a 9/11 program also coming with the same groups and co-sponsorships. On June 6th, we hosted our movie in the park at Lake Kyle. We showed the Inside Out 2. We had over 275 attendees there, and that will be the image shown there on the bottom. All right, some of our upcoming events. Still on the June flashback. We had June Jams on the Green, and that was at La Verde Park. We had Keezy Experience with over 75 attendees. The June Market Days on June 14th, as well as our Pride Market Days, which was just hosted this past Saturday on June 28th, and a performance by Yesenia and the Groove Doctors. Some of our upcoming events for July. So we will have our July 4th celebration. If any of you are in town, we do encourage you to come out. It'll be from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Fireworks are expected to go about 9 o'clock approximately. They will be shot off in a new location, not at Plum Creek this year. They will be going off north of La Verde Park. So just going off 1626. And then we will have our Kyle Market Days on July 12th, Movies in the Park on July 18th, Paint and Sip on July 23rd, and new in partnership with Texas State, we will be doing Adaptive Field Day. Registration is online and free. Market Days is free to attend, as well as Movies in the Park. Paint and Sip does come at a registration fee. And that can all be found on Rec Desk. All right. So some of our programs, we have adult trivia going on tonight at Centerfield, and that will be happening throughout the month of July into the first week of August, in which it will conclude. We will have a pickleball and cornhole tournament on July 19th. This tournament will be played at Live Oak inside, and then we will have our kickoff of City of Kyle T-Ball League. We had our first game last Monday. Unfortunately, today it was canceled due to the weather, but they will resume next Monday. And continuing on, we will have senior bingo, senior chair volleyball, and this is all in partnership with CAS. And then we will have adult sports continuing on, so softball and kickball. Coming up is aquatics. So we will have our July 25th dive-in movie showing Captain America. Registration is currently online, Rec Desk. And then James Atkins Pool will be closing the Labor Day weekend on September 1st. And then Kyle Kudas is currently still operating. Our meet is scheduled for July 19th for the regional meet. Parks and Rec Month. So tomorrow we'll kick off our Parks and Rec Month. We will be doing a proclamation with I'm jumping ahead. So some of the history. So July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Professionals. We would like to highlight all of the hard work that our professionals are currently doing in the industry. This year's theme is Build Together, Play Together. This is the 40th anniversary for the Parks and Rec Month, so starting in 1985. We do have a series. Here on the right, you will see the logo. This was made by National NRPA, and we have these shirts, which are on the back. They were on the back of your chairs. So you will see that we incorporated the water tower and then city logo as well. We do have a fun-filled July. So kicking off, like I mentioned, tomorrow, July 1st, we will do the proclamation with City Council, read by Councilmember Rizzo. We will also be doing a scavenger hunt, which kicks off tomorrow as well. That can be found online, or hard copies can be picked up at Republic, the New Republic Building, City Hall, Lake Kyle, or the Kyle Library. And that will go until July 25th. And you can redeem your prize at the Dive-In movie showing of, Captain America. On July 4th, we mentioned already the Independence Day celebration. On July 11th, we will be doing Donuts with the Director, and that can be done at Republic, and that will begin at 8 a.m. and go until about 10 a.m. July 18th will be the movie, and then July 19th, we will be doing the pickleball and cornhole tournament. And information can be found on our website at cityofkyle.com/recreation. And we have a tab for NRPA. And then from that, I will kick it on over to Chris if no questions. Good.
Thank you, Amy. Chris Escoto, Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation. So for staff training and recognitions, I do want to highlight one of our very own, CJ Martinez. He recently just took a test and passed for a license exam that makes him a pesticide applicator, specifically within the category within lawn and ornamental. From a partnership standpoint, as I mentioned last meeting, we were wanting to highlight new park partners. We do have two, Kyle Trails Coalition, and we did amend a current contract that we have on behalf of the Boy Scouts, Crew 26. I would like to note that this past month in May, we did have a fishing line collection. It was this small piece that was added. You actually see it on the screen there. Tube like that for fishing line. Individuals, if they find any fishing line, they could dump it or they could place it in that, and staff will go or actually the crew themselves will be maintaining that. That's part of their deal points. But that is one of those components that we added with those partners. And do want to highlight Volunteer Spotlight, and that's TPWD, based on the kids fishing clinic that they just put on this month. So from a CIP standpoint, there's a number of CIP projects, as you saw from David's presentation, that we have. We have 28 projects, and we are highlighting some of these on screen today. So the roundabouts, this was presented to the council earlier this month. Pretty much what ended up incorporating was highlighting the landscape. So it was the various options from the landscape standpoint. I do want to recall to you all that it is all native landscape. So based on our official plant list that was approved within the PROS master plan. Additionally, we are currently looking to finalize the scope for the roundabout art that's going to go at Windy Hill. That theme is preserving the history of that area. So we're going to be focusing on the farming and a little bit of that history that is established with the Dacey family just within that area. From public art RFP, excuse me, well, we met with the artist this past week or 2 weeks ago, and we went on site and we got an update on the timeline for the sculpture that you see here that's named Sky Blooms. So we are finalizing the contract, and that is going to be started production here anytime soon. It's probably going to be about, they said, December, January that we'll see this physically installed at the park. And there will be a number of things that will be happening hopefully by then, as I allude to here in one of the presentations with the parking lots. The playground is under construction, so there'll be quite a bit of changes that are happening over at Steeplechase over the next several months. From a public art master plan, As you all recall, the city is currently undergoing a public art master plan that got approved back in May. We did have the consultant in attendance last week and held a number of meetings with CAS. They met with our council members, art chair, and we currently do have a live survey. So if you haven't taken that just yet, that will be something that you should all be receiving here shortly, because we'll be sending that out to you all as well as through all of our citizens. So there's going to be a number of engagements that we'll be conducting similar to the PROS master plan, where we'll have pop-up surveys or sticker boards that the community can give us feedback on as well. So going back to the Spring Branch topic, Mr. Ramirez, so this is that location, what we call Silverado. So this is currently in progress. We did recently get a contract approved on behalf of council for us to move into 100% construction plans with the conducting of a water study for that area. So that is something that we're looking to kick off very soon. As a reminder, I think it's a little bit under a mile, if I'm not mistaken, Will, that the mileage is going to be. But what you see on screen here, the yellow, is what we'll be moving forward with.
How often is that easement gonna get mowed?
So that easement, from my understanding, is currently being maintained by Public Works. As far as how often that gets mowed or what specifically gets mowed, I can't answer that right now, but once a trail gets created, that's going to be going into our weekly frequency.
Because it's not very well maintained right now, and on the other side of the bridge, that just got mowed and that grass was probably this high.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we'll relay with our partners over at Public Works. I know there's been, based on the history that I've gotten about this, because we received a 311 request about a couple weeks ago on this area right there by that bridge. So we'll discuss and see if that's something that the city owns. So you're saying on the right side of this photo, that creek area? Okay. Yeah.
But those people right there on the other side of the trail, their backyards are falling also. So, and there's been, like, I know 4 of those people. Like, I walk my dog around there. They actually came, like, we actually talked, and they're upset that it's falling, and the city has done nothing about it.
That the fence is falling?
The fence line, like, I guess since all that runs pretty much with water.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so part of the study that we'll be conducting as part of this assessment is a water study to see the impervious coverage that we'll be adding, if that's the area that we'll be conducting with, because there are pervious materials that we can incorporate to let water seep. But that is one of those studies that we'll be conducting, not necessarily for the fence repairs, but just how much water is occurring through that channel from a trail standpoint. So from an engineering, that's part of the assessment that we'll be conducting.
And Mr. Ramirez, maybe you can encourage them, if you've got contact with them, to maybe put in a 311 request just to have staff go and look into those individual concerns.
Well, I think some of them have, and they're not happy with the result of what it was, because they have to keep repairing their fence when the soil and all that keeps falling.
It's erosion, right?
Yeah.
With the
Yeah, the
water.
erosion.
So what the city is telling them is, well, that's basically y'all's problem now. We can't do anything about that.
I'll look more into it. So as I said, part of the study that we're conducting from a trail standpoint, granted, you're saying it's on the southern side of that
Yeah.
line, right?
Yeah, so it's not on the trail side, it's on the other side. But
Yeah,
if
we'll
those
come
fences
up
are
with
falling
some
down
solutions,
the
but from
trail-
an engineering standpoint, I mean, that is the way that it was designed. Granted, the city does own that green area that you see right there. The property that the city just purchased is the area in red. So that was the property that we voted on, or council voted on earlier this year to purchase, but we could look into that.
Okay.
From a Vibe Trail standpoint, or continuing to the Vibe Trail, we have the Plum Creek East Trail. That is still in queue. We're still progressing. We're on track right now. They being the contractor or the consultant, submitted the 90% plans for the cities to start reviewing. So we're currently finalizing that to take us into 100% construction drawings and eventually get this project out to bid, where we do envision this being out to bid this fall. The Transportation Alternative Grant, this is a segment that we refer to as the Philomena segment. It is just on the other side of Steeplechase Park. Staff officially submitted this application to TxDOT earlier this month, and crossing our fingers that we get awarded. Roughly, it's a little bit about $1.27 million that we're hoping that the city will be receiving, and it is an 80-20 split where the city will be covering 20%. So from standpoint of when we're going to be getting any type of notification, it won't be until October that TxDOT will be making that official announcement of award.
Is this the connection piece from east to west side or just that trail piece?
As of right now, it's just staying on the right side of I-35 on the east side, but eventually we are talking about crossing under. Steeplechase and Waterleaf parking lots. This was a presentation that was made to council this past month. So we received really good feedback from council. We're moving forward with what's designed, and we're finalizing the plans here this next month where we could be out to bid for this project this fall, and again, start construction this fall, where you'll start seeing a lot of changes occurring not only at Steeplechase, but at Waterleaf Park as well. Steeplechase Playground, if you haven't driven by the playground, you'll notice that there's a number of things that look different. There is currently no canopy because they're going to be replacing the existing canopy. The structure that you see there, that photo was about a week and a half ago. I'm pretty sure it looks a lot different now. We just received an email actually this morning that they're going to be forming concrete here by the end of the week. So we should start seeing some concrete in place. As of right now, pending weather, we're looking to open the first week of August. Lake Kensington Nature Park. This is an ongoing park project, and it's a big one. There was a meeting held with the task force this past week. We're currently working on finalizing the public engagement input and what that's going to look like, but we do foresee that happening this month of July. We had a meeting with them actually today. So we're going to be deploying all various community engagement, from survey to in-person meetings, focus group meetings, to open house sessions as well. 208 and 246 Republic. Happy to say that we have completed that project. Substantially completed. There's still little things that are being had, like furniture delivery and such, but otherwise it's 99% complete, where we're just waiting on those pending items. We do have a ribbon cutting ceremony that we invite you all to attend this Wednesday, and that's going to be at 6:30 at Republic Drive. 1500 Daisy Lane. This was an item that did go back to council this month, and we did receive final direction or clarity on behalf of council on how we're going to be proceeding from a design standpoint. So the floor plan is what you all were presented with, the Max Flex option that incorporates the 6 multi-purpose rooms. So that it's going to be the design that we're going to be moving forward with. Currently finalizing those designs. We're currently working with the contractor or with the consultant on creating or finalizing the final touches. So those are your countertops, the paint and so forth. And we're going to be working with our partners on what we call a chair rodeo, where we're going to be incorporating various forms of furniture, from chairs to rolling tables, just to accommodate the usage of that space. So we do envision going out to bid within the next couple of months. So we'll be submitting those plans for review internally on behalf of the city's permitting department here in the next several weeks.
Is there a picture of that Max Flex option anywhere?
I don't have that,
I've seen
but
the two, but I don't know which one was Max Flex.
yeah, I can, and that's our apology, so we'll make sure that we show that, but we can send that out after this meeting, just so you recall what that looks like.
And I was thinking it was called the Mega Max plan, but there were so many plans.
There's been so many iterations of the Mega Max. I think you're right. I think it is the Mega Max Flex, but just to clarify, it is the one that has the 6 multi-purpose rooms. David just kept adding mega to it after each iteration. So from a Lake Kyle Fitness Court, also happy to say that this project is completed. This was completed on June 18th. Just to give you a little bit of history of this project, this equipment has been in storage, from my understanding, since COVID, about 2020. So it's something that staff, I can tell you that Amy can finally breathe now, that this project is complete. So this is something that we're looking to deploy, and we don't have the date on here, but we did confirm that the grand opening or the ribbon cutting for this is going to be July 21st, 22nd? July 22nd. So we're finalizing some details on that, and we'll be starting to promote what that looks like. But we did complete that, and it's currently available for the public to use if they want to.
It looks great. We were out there yesterday.
Oh, were y'all?
Uh-huh.
Nice. And then I would say that one thing that we are looking to have, because I know we're going to get these questions, is shade. So that is one of those components that we'll be looking to address at a future point. Waterleaf Park restroom. So Waterleaf Park, this is progressing. We did receive word, and I think I reported this last time, that the state did finalize or give us approval of the permitting process on their end. So now we're just working to getting this finalized from a design standpoint and permitting. So once we get that in place, we envision this being installed within the fall. And this is just going to go right outside the Bunton Creek, bless you, right outside the Bunton Creek playground, just on the other side of that creek. And last but not least, I'm not going to spend too much time on the skate park because we are going to be talking about it here on the next one, but there's been some exciting things with the design process for that. We do have 3D visual renders to show you all tonight, and we are looking to go to council within mid-July to seek that final design approval, and then will move us into the technical stage from a construction documentation. As of right now, we're on schedule to meet that timeline. With that, I'll stand for any questions. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Move on to agenda item number 8. Consider approval of a recommendation to City Council regarding the final design for the all-wheel skate park at Greg Clark Park. Will Atkinson?
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Will Atkinson. Y'all probably recognize me at this point. We have tonight a presentation regarding the all-wheel skate park at Greg Clark Park. The item before you tonight is this presentation and also a recommendation vote by y'all to City Council for the agenda. So with no further ado, I'd like to bring up Jan Curtis, who is the team lead on the construction side of this project. So he can do the presentation.
Thank you, Will. Hello, everybody. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me. Happy to present to you today the progress we've made since the last time I saw you. Some nice 3D renderings, so I don't need to tell you what it's about. I can show you what it's about. So as a little bit of background, I will breeze through the first part of it, which you've already seen, but maybe I'll do that just to refresh your memory. This kind of takes you through the journey of when we started and where we are now. So we wanted to take into consideration the existing skate parks that are close by at a 5, 10, 20, and 30-mile radius, regardless of size, just simply what's nearby currently. Then we took it a step further and looked at what this facility is going to be scale and size-wise. We're considering this more of a destination scale facility. So we wanted to zoom out a little bit and look at other projects that are in Texas. And you can see they're, for the most part, in bigger metropolitan areas, which is probably no surprise. Back in April, on the 14th, we met with Austin Ridge Riders and the wheelchair, two-time world champion wheelchair BMX champion Thomas Woods. So we met with those two folks who represented obviously the bikes and wheelchair MX. And of course, going back a few years now, we had a full input meeting process to get the general community's input as to what they'd like to see in this facility. And on the 9th of July, we're meeting with this group again to show them something very similar to what we're showing you today. to get their kind of final stamp of approval and any input they'd like to see in the design itself. I'll skip through this one. This is the project where we all know is Greg Clark Park and generally how traffic goes through that park. This is the slide that I showed you last time, which is shows you about all the base data and the site considerations, constraints, opportunities that it has there at the site that's been given for us. The areas in yellow are essentially what we'll call the development areas for the hard surface terrain or the skate terrain to be placed within. And the blue lines that kind of make a cross are existing utilities, water lines that we are avoiding. When I came to you last time, these were the two kind of, not options, but ideas / directions we were exploring at the time. We'll see as we get along here, but there hasn't been much change in the orientation of the different terrain types. So up to the north of page there is what we'll call the street section. And then the section in brown, the two-tone brown in the bottom right that looks like a crazy circle, oval type thing, those are the pump track lanes. And then the lighter color, it would be the bowl or the pool. And so here we are with some sizes. I think, well, it's about 34,000 square feet of actual hard surface terrain. And that includes the orange there of approximately 3,500 square feet of what we're going to call like entry plaza seating space. Whether you're participating actively in the skate park or just hanging out or visiting, that's the place for you. Some precedent imagery for those types of terrains I just mentioned. This would be more of the street course terrain or plaza street, we call it. So think stairs, rails, things that you might find in a downtown urban environment. Those are the features and terrain types that we try and mimic here in this portion of the skate park. And then on the left side here are the transition, think swimming pools, bowls, things of that nature. That's on the left side. You can see how the variety there, and then also the pump track. So we know how important a pump track is to incorporate here, and I hope and think you'll be very excited to see what we've come up with by way of the pump track. So this is, we are very much focused on the skate terrain itself, or the active space, but we're also thinking a lot on what we'll call the supporting infrastructure or the amenities that go around with that. I know shade, we talked about that. That is going to be a big part of this project. We want to have really nice shade for all these active users and spectators alike. So here's some inspirational photos on the left side. We'll get to this in a minute, but on the 3D renderings, we do have shade portrayed there. Where exactly they'll be, we're still determining. We're going to do shade modeling, work with our vendors to see which shade will work best for our locations, that sort of thing. But want to really make a highlight of that shade is very much important. There is going to be a full lighting system available for the skate park. That currently is not in the 3D renderings, but it will be. We're going to insert that in for the council meeting on the 15th. We just didn't have time. It was all hands on deck to get these renderings done for you guys tonight. And then, of course, there's going to be furnishings. The bottom center, trash cans, picnic tables, seating, all that stuff is very, very important to everybody there, not just the users or the active users. There's going to be a little bit of synthetic grass in between some of the smaller areas of the pump track in particular. The reason being is that's a hard place to mow, and we've all recognized that we want to keep that cost low for maintenance of the facility. Some more sketches, more design work, but generally, as you can see on the left here, by way of the different colorings, we've already outlined those different areas and terrain types. So this is a new one. We're starting to think now about textures, colors, materials, and how some of that can tie back into the city of Kyle by way of those very things, whether it's history of railroads or metal colors, concrete colors, the things that we can do that will make this really pop. And by no means will this be a gray expanse of concrete. It's going to be very much a pleasing place to look at. And here we go. So I have a few of these slides here of different renderings. So the first one I'd call like, top-down view on the left side. So very much in line with what we presented last time. Maybe some of these other perspective shots, like center top image, shows a great perspective shot of the pump track. And there'll be more of these in a minute, but you can see some red and blue arrows. And so there's going to be a dedicated, what we'll call BMX jump line, and that's going to be on the outside of the pump track, and that's represented in red. And then the blue in the middle will be more for just general use, whether you're scooters, bikes, skateboards, what have you. So, but in particular, the outside one, you need a little more area, different radiuses, and different kind of train of thought to get those appropriate jumps and rollers and things like that, specifically for bikes. And then bottom right image is that street course or plaza area, again, to mimic kind of the urban environment. And keep in mind, this isn't all, I was happy to see the, part of the mission of the city is to be all-inclusive, and this is truly going to be an all-inclusive park. I mean, we're taking this back to Thomas, who's in the wheelchair, and we want a lot of these things to be accessible to him, whereas other facilities, even at this scale, do not have that. So this is a really good trend that we hope we start here. Some feature plan legend. I've kind of gone through some of these, but I'll maybe share a few more. Let's see here. So, well, first of all, the top right is where we preliminarily have the shade structures. We're thinking maybe like a 20 by 30 if we can swing it there on the left side, maybe a slightly smaller one on the right side. And we're even toying with the idea of having another shade structure up on the bowl area, because users of bowls really do take turns one at a time. So there's going to be a lot of people sitting there waiting for their turn, or if they don't want to turn, they're watching other people. So we foresee that as a really big hangout spot for just users. So we'd rather they not fry on concrete. And here's another one. So we do have some nice vertical facings for some signage. And so we're going to be talking with staff here as to what makes sense, and to welcome people in. So not only like a signage for here you are at the park, but also we need some rules signage and maybe some wayfinding once you're in there. Say pump track over here, street course over here, bowl over here. Here's how you get there. There's multiple ways of getting to the same area. Yeah, so here's that bowl area. So this is now looking specifically at the bottom right section there of the bowl and the pump track. So 2 is obviously a pool style bowl. That's what we're calling it. We're right by that number 10. That's the start of the jump lane that goes around the outside in red, with the red arrows. But where that star is, just above the 10, that's that area I think that's going to be conducive to really like putting more thought into seating there. And we need a lot of area just to, I call it like lay down area. You can imagine 4, 5, 6 bikes just laid down. That takes up a lot of space. So we need to have be considerate and thoughtful and preemptively think about where bikes and scooters and all that stuff are going to be. And so people can still navigate around it. Otherwise, it'll just be a choke point. So hopefully, like, kind of giving you some insight as to where our head is now. We definitely have the footprint down. Now we're really looking at the details within the skate park and furnishings, supporting amenities, that sort of thing. That's where we are now. So after council, assuming that goes well, that's when we turn we'll wrap up the concept design and have the final 3D renderings available for everybody. And then we'll switch gears with the staff's approval to start the plans and specifications page, section of the design work. Does anybody have any questions? These are just all different kind of perspective shots throughout the park to kind of give you a better sense of the terrain and the undulations and everything else. So obviously, all these things that you're seeing here, the whole skate park is site built. So there's nothing that's kind of prefabricated and just pieced together and bolted real quick. So lots of time and effort to make sure that everything is perfect. Essentially, it's all about the details when it comes to the construction of this when the time comes.
So these are published presentations. You can find them online. So I
Yeah.
sent the link to the skate club sponsor at Hayes High School, and his only thing was, this looks amazing, but we need more shade.
There you
They're
go.
already working.
Okay. We didn't want to over-promise for you guys here, but we know that is important, and we want to personally see more shade, so we're going to do what we can to make it happen. Yeah. But I'm glad you told me that.
Well, he and the kids thought that it looked good. They were excited.
Good. Here's our timeline. So last time we were just a month back on the red line in the middle. So we're right on track. We're really moving at a clip here. And quite frankly, it feels really good. We're working as a team, not only internally with us, but also with Chris, Will, David, Amy, and the gang. So yeah, we're just right on track. So I think that's all I had. Unless there are any more questions.
Looks great so far.
Thank you.
It looks cool.
All right.
Exciting.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And we do need a recommendation vote from y'all to City Council based on tonight's presentation.
Recommend as presented? What's the, well, what recommendation?
options?
What are our options?
So I guess we did not put that in the presentation, so I apologize. A recommendation vote to ideally see it move forward to City Council. It can be as presented, or if you have any ideas that you would like to see incorporated, that can be included as well. But yeah.
So we need a motion to
Add more shade.
The specific statement.
add more shade.
The specific statement is in your agenda. So if you want to reference that, so it's like clear what it is that you're approving or not approving. So you look at agenda item 5.
I make a motion to approve the final design for the all-wheel skate park with the caveat that it needs lots of shade.
And I second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Pass unanimously. And we'll move on to the final agenda item. Consider approval to change Parks and Recreation Board from Monday, the 24th of November, to Monday, the 17th. And for the Parks and Recreation Board meeting from Monday, December 22nd to Monday, December 15th for the December Parks and Rec Board meeting to address scheduling conflicts due to Christmas and Thanksgiving.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, Park and Rec Board. I'm Tamara Aquino. I'm the Business and Strategic Planning Manager for the Park and Rec Department. And so exactly what Ellen just said is what we're going to be talking about. So we're just going to go do the history on that and just look at the options and get your recommendation and motion on that. So essentially, usually the November Park Board meeting and the December one meeting is usually falls on that week of the major holiday. And so we're going to already make the recommendation to change those dates. So you can already have it planned out for the rest of the calendar year. And again, we just want to make sure that it's good with you. And so usually just conflict, and we want to make sure everyone here gets to participate in those meetings. So we believe moving them would be able to do that.
I would make, unless there's any discussion, I would make a motion to approve the dates as presented.
I'll second.
So which option are we going with? So option 1 is the changing of from the Monday, the 17th.
Yeah.
And then, or the other one's denying and keeping
So
it.
we would go with option 1.
Okay.
All in favor?
Hi.
Oh, who was that first? Julia, second?
Second.
Helen. Oh, First, Ellen.
Second.
Julia, second. And then, all right. Okay, great. That was so quick. I could barely blink.
And I think
I do
we're,
have a question though about, the dates. Are we required to be here to attend these meetings, a certain number of meetings per year?
I think the rule is that if you miss 3 meetings, you may be,
Correct. If you do miss 3 in a row and they're unexcused, then it could mean for potential to be dismissed from the board. It's not so much the number of meetings that you're required to go, but everyone's presence is always important because that is how, one, you're here and we want to get your feedback, but 2, it's be able to meet quorum. But no, there's not a specific number of meetings that you have to attend. Anything else?
No.
I
Okay.
guess we're, one or more members of the board may participate in the meeting by video conference, provided a quorum of the board will be present. There will be a quorum of the City Council of Kyle, President of the meeting, who may participate in the discussion. No official action will be taken by City Council members in attendance. So we need a motion to adjourn, right?
I make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Okay. I'll second that. Either one of us second it. The motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank y'all for the
Thank y'all.
T-shirts and the tea towel. And tomorrow
Wednesday.
night at council, take our
Wednesday.
picture in
Okay.
Parks and Rec
I
Week.
moved it. I've got it.
6:30?
And then Wednesday, ribbon cutting at the new office.
Wait, council is tomorrow? Tomorrow at 7, Wednesday at 6:30.